national population. That's as of September 2018. But what is important, of course, is that KwaZulu-Natal is the second biggest in terms of registered voters. It boasts 5.5 million, or 20.65% of the national 26.7 million registered voters. Like all of the country's 9 provinces, it faces a number of challenges, and those, of course, would include things like wasteful expenditure, poor or no sanitation in some areas. But of course, we're also looking at difficulties in the health and education system. So these have led to communities protesting or some form of rebellion against the local government. 253 of these incidents experienced in the province. That's between October 2004 and March 2019. But the question we're asking is how political parties will deal with some of these challenges in the provinces. 31 parties contesting KwaZulu-Natal, but joining us tonight is just 9 of them. So I will introduce them by alphabetical order. ACDP is represented by Mr. Eric Mangelo, who's furthest to my right, and Mr. From the ANC is Mr. Thomas Kaunda, ATM, represented by Mr. Mxolisi Phakathi, COPE, represented by Ms. Jessica Pande. And I must say, I mentioned this earlier on, that I'm very disappointed that you seem to be the only female candidate here, but perhaps political parties can tell us why. And DA by Mr. Zwakele Mwango, and the EFF, Mr. Vusi Khoza. Freedom Front Plus, Mr. Duncan Dubois. Is it Dubois or Dubois? Dubois, okay. IFP's Mr. Velenkosini Thabisa, and NFP Mr. Vikizita Mlocha. Sorry, I'm, being a South African, we have to speak as many languages as we possibly can. And I know some of you will be saying Tsepiso, but we all are doing our best. Thank you and welcome to you all. Let me first start with this important question. Why KwaZulu-Natal for some of you political parties? Let's start with the ACDP. Is it important for you at all as a party? 1 minute each, and we're counting. So we'll start now.
May I greet the viewers at home? ACDP first of all, may I indicate that I'm Archbishop Mangele. That's my difference between me and other gentlemen I'm with here.
Okay, apologies.
Yes, I'm a man of God. Then ACDP, as it is known by everybody, is a political party based on biblical principles. So in KwaZulu-Natal, we believe that, and we believe that ACDP, one, is going to bring God in KwaZulu-Natal, bring God back to KwaZulu-Natal, because there was God in KwaZulu-Natal before. Now, I don't know where he is now, but we want to bring him back. Secondly, you know that with God, it's only when we are going to get leaders with integrity.
Your time is up, Archbishop, and I did mention that we are counting. I've got people in our studio van who've got a stopwatch, so please note that this time is not determined by me, but it is being counted by a stopwatch. So let's go to the ANC. Mr. Kaunda, your time starts now.
Thank you very much. We as African National Congress, we differentiate ourselves with the parties present today because we are actually governing this province, and we have laid a solid foundation to work from. The president of the ANC has unveiled the manifesto, the People's Manifesto, which has reflected on the journey that we have traversed with the people of South Africa. Yes, we acknowledge that there were challenges that we have experienced, but together with the people of our country, we have hope, and there is a green light at the end of the tunnel that this country will benefit a lot from the leadership of this organization. And we are confident that the things that we have achieved, they will be put and consolidated to the plan of the province, and the provincial government, led by the African National Congress, has also developed clear plans which are responsive to the national development plans that are there in our plans for the country. And we are indeed, and we have achieved a lot that
And your time is up,
Thank you very much.
Mr. Kaunda. Thank you very much. Let's move on to the ATM. Mr. Mxolisi Phakathi, why is KwaZulu-Natal important for you? Starting
Thank you very
now.
much. Greetings to the viewers at home. We as the ATM, we're for sure different because we are also a faith-based organization that stands for peace, an organization that believes on humanism. Our ideology is humanism. We are saying the race approach is taking us back to apartheid. What we are saying today, there's one human race, one God, and we are going to use the disadvantagedness to go to development, to address the issues of development. KwaZulu-Natal is very important that we reign in KwaZulu-Natal because there's too much fightings. We believe that when we bring peace, as we are a faith-based organization, we will bring peace into KwaZulu-Natal and make sure that everyone that stays in KwaZulu-Natal stays in peace.
Thank you very much. That was just as your time was ending. And let's move on now to COPE's Ms. Jessica Pandey to find out why this province is important to you. Your time starts now.
This province of KZN is always been important to all South Africans. It is very relevant that KZN must progress. KZN is the hub of economic development in South Africa, and that economic development has been dragged through the muds. As we go into this election, as a broken country, fighting to survive. The Congress of the People believe that we cannot harp over the mismanagement of the last 8 years. We believe that we cannot harp over what has gone wrong, but we're looking to a fresh start. We're trying to recoup South Africa, bring it back to 1994, make South Africa the constitutional country that it was in 1994, and continue to grow this beautiful country. Our plan is to ensure that unity is the utmost at the top of our campaigning.
And your time is up. Thank you very much, Ms. Pandey. Let's move on to hear the perspective now of the DA. Zwayekele Mncwango, how do you foresee your role here in KwaZulu-Natal and why?
Look, firstly, I must say this province is a beautiful province. And this province is a key to South Africa. If you can get KZN to work, you can get South Africa to move forward and have a better future. All we need in this province, you need government that put the needs of the people first. You need a political will to deal with issues of corruption. You need a political will to ensure that we have growth in our economy to create more jobs. You need a political will to ensure that better services are delivered to our people. You need also a government that can really fight crime in this province and also ensure that we have secured our borders. If we can do that, South Africa can be moving, we can have a better future. All we need is a government is capable, and only DA is capable to change the lives of our people. As you said earlier, we have a number of protests in this province.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mncwango. So let's hear now from the EFF. Mr. Khoza, how would you frame the importance of KwaZulu-Natal in your party's eye view, given the fact that you have said that you don't really believe much in the role of provinces?
Yeah, as the economic freedom fighters, we do not really believe much into this whole issue of provinces because we believe it's a waste of resources. If you were to collapse the provinces and have a national government and local government, you would be able to save a lot of resources that you would then be able to channel towards service delivery. But why is KwaZulu-Natal important in the bigger scheme of politics in South Africa? It is important because it's the second most populous in terms of population in the country, and yet it rates among the first three poorest. There is something wrong there. It means that KwaZulu-Natal has never tasted freedom from during the days of apartheid right through. Why is the EFF therefore eyeing this province? We eye this province because we want to demonstrate that as the EFF, we are not a regional party and we are a national party that can exist equally in all the provinces. And the
And
rest
your
of the
time is up.
parties here
Thank you very
have
much,
had an
Mr. Khoza.
opportunity.
Let's hear from the Freedom Front Plus now. Mr. Dubois.
Thank you. The Freedom Front is concerned that disgraceful and debilitating infighting and factionalism has marred the functionality of provincial government in KZN. To prevent a recurrence of that, the Freedom Front's cornerstone policy is that all appointments, procurements and promotions and posts should be based on merit and not on demographic representativity or cadre deployment. We see three crucial issues in the province. They are local government, which is the face of government. The fact that the majority of municipalities are dysfunctional is a bad advertisement for government in this province. We see housing as absolutely critical in rolling back slum clearance and informal settlements. The fact that informal settlements have mushroomed since 1994 means that housing has not been developed. And finally, education. We want to see professionalism return to education and removed from trade unions, which seem to have more say than the appointed
Thank
officials.
you very much, Mr. Dubois. Let's hear now from the IFP, Dr. Dubois and Mr. Tsepiso. Let's find out from your party. Obviously, you enjoy a great deal of support here, but why do you want to further entrench your support here? Your time starts now.
Good evening to all viewers. KwaZulu-Natal is important to the IFP because the IFP have governed this province and had a clean record of administration and good service delivery. The IFP laid a solid foundation in this province which has been destroyed by the ANC. The education system is collapsing, the health is collapsing, crime is increasing every day, unemployment is increasing every day, the borders of this province are open and illegal immigrants are coming in and day out. The IFP is ready to fix all the broken pieces of this province, which has been done by the ruling party, because we have a track record. During the time when we were in governance, this province was prosperous, education was at a high standard, the health services were good, social services were easily accessible with no many challenges as it is today.
And your time
under
is
the
up,
ruling
Mr.
party.
Tsepiso. So let's finally hear from the NFP here, Mr. Vikizita Mlotshwa. How do you articulate your reasons for wanting to grow your support in KwaZulu-Natal? And your time starts now.
Greetings to viewers at home. NFP is the only party that brought the harmony in this province. Before 2011, there was no go areas in this province. Only the NFP, when it was formed, then there was stability and no-go areas were stopped. So therefore, it is very important for the party that is led by a woman in this province to take over, to show some other parties that even a woman can lead and can take this province forward. So therefore, as the NFP, we are saying to the people, we understand there is no water to the extent, to the large of this province.
And your time is up. And for the benefit of our viewers at home or wherever you're watching from, if you're streaming in from SABCnews.com, I did explain to the political parties that they'll be given an opportunity to make an opening statement. And from here on, the debate starts. And I want to pose a question. First takers, whoever it will be, I've heard the talk or the hints of insecurity, some of you saying peace. Mr. Mlotshwa here almost got to the point at what I'm going to say by saying there were no-go areas. KwaZulu-Natal has the highest number of political killings in the country, yet none of you mention it in your manifesto. Why is that? You can go ahead, Mr. Khoza.
We as the EFF, we are on record on the Mwerane Commission. There was a Mwerane Commission that was established in this province. We are on record as the EFF as having said, one, the Mwerane Commission was a waste of money because all lives matter. It mustn't be that lives of politicians should be regarded as important. That's one. Number two, we also mentioned that the issue of political killings, it's about greed. It's about the people being greedy,
Who's
killing
greed?
each other.
Let's cut to the
greed
chase.
of the
Who's greed?
politicians, and in the main, it's the ruling party. They are killing each other because of tenders. They are currently standing. Some of them are standing trials. Some of them are sitting in prison. Why? Because they eliminate each other so that they can have access to resources and state resources. That is why there's so much political killings. It's about greed. It's got nothing to do with anything else. So I am therefore saying, because they want to steal, they want to loot, they are ready to kill each other. It's on record. So we mentioned it on the Mwerane Commission. And you know why they do not want to release the Mwerane Commission, this government, the Premier in particular, because it points
When you
towards
said they
home.
don't want to release what? The
The
report has been
Mwerane
released.
Commission, because it makes it clear that this is the ANC killing each other because of greed, and they are killing each other so that they can control resources better. And it's all there in the report.
Okay,
They don't want
let's
to
have the
release it.
ANC respond to that. Mr. Kaunda, what is your response?
Yeah, firstly, on the
Please, you'll use a microphone.
Thank you. On the stability of our province, it should be attributed to what the ANC has provided as leadership, because this is the only province that has got a structure in government which is called Multi-Party Political Intervention Committee, where all political parties sit together and deal with challenges that are confronting the province,
accusation
as
made
well
by
as to
the
stabilize
EFF.
the province. And it is the ANC that has called for Mwerane Commission, and we are indeed happy that is starting to yield the positive results, because the outcomes of the commission has pointed out that it's not only the ANC that has got challenges of leaders who are being killed, it's cut across all political parties, and the people who have been arrested, they're from all different political parties. So as a result, the ANC has welcomed the report, and we are already in government implementing the outcomes and the findings of and the recommendations of
Mr.
that
Khoza
report.
is accusing you of not releasing that report. How do you respond?
It is not true. The report has been tabled to the legislature, where Mr. Khoza and Honorable Khoza is sitting as a member of the legislature. It has been open for the public consumption because it was presented by the Honorable Premier in public. And the Honorable Premier has welcomed comments from the people to say what is it that the government must do. But we are happy that the province is stable, and from the previous elections,
Let's hear from
we've
Mr.
achieved a
Tsepiso,
lot from
because
that.
the IFP, NFP, and ANC has the highest number of casualties when it comes to political killings. Let's hear from you, Mr. Tsepiso. Is what's feeding this wanton killing greed? Is it because of people who are fighting to enrich themselves because they are, for lack of a better word, stealing or eating state resources, as some say?
Of late, that is the cause. But initially, I think firstly, let us thank God that in KwaZulu-Natal, the violence that costed many lives has come to an end. But the ANC has been a common denominator. If there is violence between any political party, it will be the political party and the ANC. All these political parties can tell their story, how the ANC wanted to eliminate them. We thank God that it came to a stage.
So you're
where
saying that it's outside of intra-party conflict?
initially, it was intra-party conflict, but now, because the violence has stopped, it is within the ANC, which is characterized by the sense of greed, because what makes many killings today is people who want to take control of the state resources.
I just want you to clarify, Mr. Tsepiso, because you are saying they are killing other people outside of the party. Who are they killing? And when you say they, are you referring to members of the ANC who are targeting other political party members in this fight for state resources?
No, if you go to violence, the IFP experienced violence with the ANC. The DA will tell their story against the ANC. The EFF will tell their story that in other areas when they want to campaign, the ANC wants to prevent them. So now the common denominator in violence in KwaZulu-Natal has been the ANC. But I'm saying thanks God, because that violence, which took many lives, has come to an end through the discussion that was made between the political parties. The unfortunate scenario, as we speak now, is the political violence of killing the leaders, especially within the organization, and this is rampant within the ANC because it controls the resources of the state.
Let me come to the Freedom Front plus Dr. Dubois had his hand up first, so I'm going to go to him. Do you agree with some activists who say KwaZulu-Natal police have been compromised and there's a culture of intimidation and paranoia and corruption of thieves who thrive?
Thank you. Yes, indeed, I do. And in fact, I strongly endorse what the IFP and the EFF have stated this evening. It is quite true. The infighting and factionalism is simply about a bun fight over resources and who can get their snouts in the trough as deeply, more deeply than the next one. And yes, it's about looting and greed, and it has nothing to do with the voters, and that is why this province is in a shambles in terms of provincial government.
But what is the role of state entities or the security forces, such as the police? What are they doing to quell the situation?
One is reluctant to point fingers at them, but it would seem very often that they are not going to the nub of the issue and that it's politics that has interfered with the rule of law.
Okay, so let me hear them from the DA because they also want to jump in. What do you think the reason is, and what did you want to say, reply to some of the issues that have been raised?
Look, firstly, I think one must say the Morano Commission was released. That's the first point one must say by the Premier. But the problem is around the implementation of the recommendation. What came out clear from the recommendations that it's not actually around political intolerance. So the notion to say it's political killings is actually a wrong notion. It's a corruption because it became clear that those who are being killed are mainly whistleblowers. So which means if we can have government that have a political will to fight corruption, you can really stop these killings, because to call political killings, we deviate from real problem. The problem is a patronage system created by the ANC where the elite seem to benefit from the tender system. Then if you don't have transparency in terms of procurement processes, you will continue having people dying in this province, because the problem is if criminals are leading this country, you will never stop corruption. By not stopping corruption, then people keep dying, because whistleblowers must be protected. Today, when someone exposes corruption, get exposed to those who are corrupt, then they get to die. That's a problem we're facing in this province.
All right, I'll come back to Mr. Kaunda, but I need to give the ACDP an opportunity because they also want to weigh in, and I'll come back to the NFP as well. So let's go ahead, Archbishop, to hear your response, and ATM will come to you as well.
Yes, as ACDP, this is where we want to come in, because all what is happening is happening to those parties who are ruling without God. That is where we want to come in, because we want to teach people the tolerance, to teach people peace, to teach people the issue of corruption, that what is the outcome of corruption? Because as correctly said by the TA, that the cause of all this is that who is disclosing the kind of information that is attacking another person? Who is disclosing the corruption? For the corruption not to be disclosed, you need to be silent.
You also agree that it has moved.
Yes, so that's why we need to come in and teach people that if you have God, you've got to respect yourself, respect God, and respect other people.
All right, Mr. Mlocha, so I'm still going to ask the role of the criminal justice system. What has it been, and is it enough to bring an end to the killing spree, as some have called it?
In fact, not at all. You see, for example, there was a case, if I'm not mistaken, it was on the 19th, of the mayor of Herikwala, Mr. Ndobe. You know what happened? I attended the case. What happened? There were two factions from the ANC, one supporting the mayor, Mr. Ndobe, and the other faction supporting the late Tsepiso Makwetla. Then early in the morning, when we came by 8 o'clock, the factions of Ndobe told the other faction that Ndobe will be out by today. He has got money, you don't have money. They were uttering that. So therefore, it means the police, I'm coming to your question now, the police, Colonel Lucas, who was there, handed over the accreditation for everyone to attend the case inside. We didn't go there. He gave it to the Mayor Nxumalo of the ANC. Mayor Nxumalo decided to give only ANC. You see, Colonel Lukosi is giving the ANC, and only ANC entered the case. So therefore, I will say we cannot. It means that the system justice is biased by the way.
So obviously these are allegations. I need to come to the ATM because you wanted to respond, and thereafter I'd like to give Cope an opportunity. If I could just ask you to both quickly make your statement. Mr. Kaunda, I realize a lot of these are pointed towards you. We'll give you an opportunity to respond, but I do need to take an ad break. Mr. Phakathi?
You see, that is why I say in KZN, it's important for ATM to come here and be the party that's going to take KZN forward. Look, the problem here is perpetrators that are doing their own thing. And they will come and say, it is a certain party that has done this, but it's perpetrators. Let us put it that way.
But which party are they pointed to?
They will point to the ANC. Obviously, they will point to the ANC, and there are other parties that are doing the same thing that the ANC is doing in KZN.
So you're saying it's not just one-sided?
It's not only one-sided. The entire KZN needs to be cleaned. When you look at our manifesto, we have spoken about this thing and said we are going to introduce a justice-based capital punishment, because the perpetrators today, they know that they can do anything that they want and get away with it. So it is important that we, as ATM, come in KZN so that we can introduce systems and ways that we can then solve this problem, because it's a problem that we have.
Ms. Pandey, before we take our break?
Just to go further to what you're asking about the criminal justice system, you know, it's very easy to say that we can, like in our reports are saying, that this is amounting to a criminal act and these must be dealt with the criminal act. But how can these police that are appointed by the ANC then act against the ANC? How does the NPA that has been infiltrated by the ANC now act against the ANC? That as well has to be corrected in this province. The appointments of public representatives by the ruling party has also hindered the action against those that have acted criminally.
All right, thank you very much. And we're going to take a break and continue with this discussion. Mr. Kaunda, I know you want to respond to this. Earlier this month, Police Minister Bheki Cele said that more than 120 suspects had been arrested in the last 6 months because of political killings. So it would seem that there is some action. How much, and is it enough? We'll come back to answer that question. Don't go away.
We've been talking about funeral cover for many years.
One of the things I've noticed, me, is how different funerals can be across cultures.
But where they're all the same is that everyone wants a dignified funeral.
In my culture, there's a saying, "Ukufa umakoti wemizi yonke."
I like that. Death is a bride of every home. That means death can come to any family.
I chose a clientele funeral plan because it's affordable and suits my budget.
I chose clientele because they are an original. They've been around for a long time, and I know within my family are in good hands.
What is it that you want your family to do with the money when you're gone?
I told my family, I don't want a fancy funeral. They must come there for a cook sister and a sandwich, and then they must use the rest of the money for their future.
SMS dignified to 31043 and we'll call you back. Clientele funeral plans pay out in 24 hours. We will send you 200 Rand airtime when you claim. You can cover up to 13 people on one plan. Plans include grocery, unveiling, and transport benefits. 3 children are covered at no extra cost. What do you want your funeral to be like?
I would like my funeral to be dignified. My family and friends will still be sad, I hope. And my boys will be taken care of. I would like them to be educated because that's the most important thing for me. And that's where clientele comes in.
If you choose our ultimate plan, we will pay all your premiums back. Yes, all your premiums paid back on top of your cover amount.
Dankie clientele.
Clientele.
Clientele is the name I trust.
Clientele funeral plans.
It's your final gift of love.
SMS dignified to 31043 and we'll call you back. SMS now.
And welcome back. You're watching Full View here at SABC Durban Studios, KwaZulu-Natal, the focus of our election debate. And we're looking at the thorny issues of political killings and political violence, or violence in general here in KwaZulu-Natal, with the 9 political parties who are taking part in the discussion as the ACDP, ANC, ATM, COPE, DA, EFF, Freedom Front Plus, IFP, NFP. And before we went on the break, the political parties here have been pointing a finger at the ANC, saying it's largely due to them that we've seen political infighting that has spilled over to other parties because whistleblowers are calling out corruption. I just want to read out what researcher Mary De Haas says, and I'm sure you're familiar with her work. She says, monitoring KwaZulu-Natal's violence is very important because it can destabilize the whole of South Africa because of the province's strategic importance. So it's crucial not only to supplying an economic hub like the Gauteng province, which is 600 kilometers away, but obviously in general, if there's no peace in KwaZulu-Natal, it's a very worrying concern for the rest of the country. Mr. Kaunda, how do you respond to some of these very, very strong allegations, including the alleged collusion of police?
Indeed, stability in KwaZulu-Natal is critical because we are the 2nd biggest economy in the country, and we've just surpassed Western Cape as the province due to the efforts that we have put to consolidate investment in this province. On the question of the Morane Commission, I think there's a lot that have been achieved, and as the ANC, firstly, we have full confidence to the criminal justice system. We have full confidence in such a way that what we have observed as arrest, we have a firm belief and conviction that there are many arrests that are still going to take place in this province to face those who are culprits and those who are perpetuating violence in all aspects. And we wish also to acknowledge that since the ANC has engaged the president of the country as the ANC, we said to the President, can you please resuscitate the interministerial committee? The president responded positively, and that committee has been resuscitated, and that committee has established a task team of the law enforcement agencies, because the coordination and integration of all law enforcement agencies, including NPA and other departments, is critical to make sure that we win the battle against the scourge of killings. And we have observed that on a number of arrests, about 161 cases opened in relation to murder of politicians, intimidation, assaults, and all of that. Out of that, 163 people.
But how sophisticated is the whistleblowers program to protect those who speak out? Because it is clear to many that should they wish to speak out, it means that it could certainly be summary death or execution.
Certainly, it is important to secure witnesses, but we must also state the achievements that out of 161 cases opened, about 163 people have been arrested in the province. So this is a very significant breakthrough, which is an indication.
So
but with the witnesses, We wish to state clearly that that's a responsibility of NPA. Whoever who needs to be protected, it should go through the channels of NPA to protect those witnesses that are attending to court.
So, Mr. Khoza, I'll come to you, but I'd like you to respond to this question because we are moving on. It's a long discussion and there are lots of other issues to look into, but I want to hear from you how ingrained you think corruption is in the fabric of our society. I want us to look at higher education. The fact that you had at UKZN's medical school places for sale scandal. If you remember, at their medical school, there were allegations that places were being sold to students for as much as R500,000 rand. How deep is corruption in the fabric of our society, and what are you as political parties doing to rid the country and the province of it? I hear you talk about the role of religion, but let's talk about practical steps. So EFF, you can start off this conversation because you raised your hand. We'll come to you, Freedom Front Plus.
Thank you very much, Tsepiso. I think we wouldn't be doing justice on the issue of political violence if we do not talk about the proliferation of firearms. If you can indulge me for a second. The proliferation of firearms and guns in this province is endemic. And let us put it squarely where it belongs. Until we deal with that, we won't be able to deal with political violence. The proliferation of firearms comes from way back during apartheid. It's from the ANC. They had self-defense units that were armed to the teeth. And it's from the IFP. They had self-protection unit that was armed by both apartheid and outside government to fend this violence. And guess what? Once the issue of political violence was stabilized, it then moved to the taxes. If you were listening to Minister Peggy Cele, when he was counting as to how many people have been arrested, he mentioned the private security companies and the number of guns that have been seized from them. The same people that were with the ANC self-defense units and self-protection units of the IFP are today bodyguards of these VIPs, and they are employed by private security companies. They will kill political leaders, and they will kill. They'll be hitmen in the tech industry. So I'm going to give both an opportunity to respond, and then we'll get into the issue of education with Dr. Dubois. Let's start with the IFP. How do you respond to this? I'm going to give you a minute to respond to these allegations that are being made by the EFF. Mr. Tsepiso?
The allegations by the EFF is unfair because the EFF knows that the IFP was compelled by the ANC because what made the IFP to defend itself, it was the violence that was waged by the ANC to the IFP.
So Mr. Khoza is gesturing that you are confirming his allegations.
Yes, but his allegation is unfair in the sense that the IFP took a defense stance, which was triggered by the ANC.
So you're confirming that there are these hidden arms caches. You're confirming that there is this network of mercenaries, if I would call them, who are spilling over into the taxi industry. Is that what you're saying yes to?
No, I'm not confirming it, but what I'm saying, the IFP had to defend itself.
Okay,
it was compelled by the ANC to defend itself.
Mr. Kaunda?
And one point I wanted to raise earlier is that the criminal justice has been undermined by the ANC, and I really doubt now, taking the case of Mayor Ndobe, it has discredited the criminal justice, and I doubt the ANC will ever gain credit in dealing with crime in our country.
Okay, Mr. Khan, how do you respond to that?
Yes, as ANC, we have put concerted efforts to bring about peace and stability in this province. We have a good record of that. Since the early 90s and the mid-90s, the violence which was displayed in the province, we've been able to engage with the IFP, to have bilaterals with the IFP to put this to closure. And we are confident that whoever who carries or who is in possession of illegal firearm, that person is committing crime and that person must be arrested. And we are happy.
The IFP saying that you provoked the 1990s killings?
No, we didn't provoke anyone. In fact, we were instrumental.
Did you partake?
In fact, we were instrumental in calling for peace. It is the ANC in this province that ran clear programs and engagements to bring about peace and stability.
All right.
But those who are carrying illegal firearms in the province are being arrested, and we commend the police for that.
All right,
They
I
are
need
doing
to
a very
move
good
on.
job.
I need to move on. Dr. Dubois, let's come to you. I asked the question about how ingrained is corruption in the fabric of our society if we're going to see instances like we saw at the UKZN Medical Centre where places for students are up for sale as much as R500,000.
Yes, that scramble for places must be laid squarely at the door of demographic representativity. That's why the Freedom Front's cornerstone policy is merit. If positions and places were based on merit, you wouldn't have this unseemly scramble for positions based on skin
Okay,
color.
so just unpack that for us. What exactly are you saying? That people are so desperate to get into positions that they don't belong in, that they are buying places to get into medical school?
Well, the question is, why should they be doing it? If places were allocated on the basis of merit and not skin color, we wouldn't have this situation. It's a meritocracy we need in this country. It's the only way to restore competence at every level of government and in society.
Well, I have other political parties who are here. Do you have any response to that?
We're the only party that supports that, and I'm not surprised that they feel a little uneasy about it because they all have different configurations of demographic representativity. The DA, for example, calls it diversity, which is just a watered-down version of the same thing.
So, DA, is that what you're doing? Do you have a policy similar to the Freedom Front Plus, especially on representativity, demographics and race, especially in the workplace, and are you just sugarcoating them?
No.
You've been accused of doing, by the way, in some quarters.
No. We don't have a race-based policy. We are the party that believe in true diversity. But we can't ignore the fact that our past was so harmful to many South Africans. Now you need to redress the past. Now how to do that? You have to ensure that all South Africans are brought within the mainstream economy and have equal access to opportunities. That's all we talk about. But to come to your question around the issue of corruption, I think the issue is around the leadership and political will to fight corruption. It's for that reason the DA is saying, when we get to government, we'll ensure that we do a regular lifestyle audit for politicians.
The issue
also
goes deeper than that. And because if we're looking at higher education, we have had widespread protests in this country since 2015 called #FeesMustFall. We saw that in KwaZulu-Natal, a student was shot and killed during these protests. And the core of it really is they believe that they deserve the free education that they've been promised. But also the question that is being raised, is that because corruption is causing or costing millions of students opportunities?
Firstly, let me say, the DA is saying education must be equal for everyone. We are saying those needy students must get full bursary, where a student will be able to get full paid fees, accommodation, and they must get books. So we are saying you must get a full bursary if you are a poor student, if you can't afford education. Under DA government will never allow a situation where a young person will have to return back home or even bribe someone to get education.
Okay.
We are saying for us to build a South Africa for all, we have to ensure that everyone have access to good education.
And it's deserving. Mr. Kaunda, I'll come to you next because your hand was up. I mean, some of the party proposals on education, including higher education, is allocating more money for food and transport. But are you exploring the selected features of institutional responses to these problems? As in, are you adequately reframing the challenge? Mr. Kaunda.
Yeah, our policies are responsive to the call by the Freedom Charter to open the doors of learning. We are actually providing free education in this country from early childhood development up to the university, and the challenges which have been confronting students on the academic exclusions and financial exclusions. We as ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, we have taken practical steps. We did not just watch it from the television, but we decided to send our government to make sure that they intervene in all these institutions of higher learning. We've been engaging with vice chancellors. We also engage with student representatives and their organizations to bring about peace and stability. And we wish to pride ourselves that indeed interventions working with all stakeholders in these universities, we've been able to stabilize the province. But we wish to state clearly that the ANC condemns racism with its utter contempt that
What are you
it deserves.
referring to? Is that
Sorry?
just a blanket statement?
I'm saying the racism on the basis that in some of the institutions there have been issues raised with ANC government to state that the recruitment and the intake in some of the departments and faculties, the issue of racism was also applied.
Okay.
But it did not end there. As the province of KwaZulu-Natal, we said, because these are societal matters that needs a platform where we can be able to share ideas. We then therefore instructed government of KwaZulu-Natal to establish a social cohesion council to
I'm
deal
going to
with
come
exactly
to Archbishop
the
Mangel.
issues
I
that
hear,
are
Mr.
confronting
Khoza,
us.
you want to comment, and I'll come to you to ATM just a moment. But the point is, and I still continue to ask this question, are we being inventive enough? If we're saying free higher education, are we talking about the fact that the things that we say should be extended to students, food, transportation, etc., housing, that they too must come free of cost? So let's come to you, Archbishop Mangel.
I don't think that enough has been done. I don't think so, although we are not involved in the government of KwaZulu-Natal. But I've seen a number of students who have passed matric, who are not in schools just because they don't have money. And at a certain stage, I've seen municipalities try to intervene and provide something for learners to go and register in the universities, because those learners, they do not have money. Now the question is, if the education is free, why do institutions still need money for learners to register if actually the education is free? That is a major problem. And also the issue of the issue of the institution which sponsor the learners. It's also has got NSFAS. Thank you very much. Also has got a question mark.
Okay.
Because other students, they get funding, others they don't. So there is a problem, a very huge problem that I don't think much has been done.
Okay. Archbishop Mangele, let me go to Mr. Phakathi, ATM, and we'll come back this way again. Yes, Mr. Phakathi?
You see, it is very much that important that we start somewhere. In our manifesto, we speak of decolonizing education. What are we saying? Is that if you look at the education system, it's not equal to everyone. You still have a curriculum that is different in the private schools. Then you look at the public schools, you're talking of something else. The students are learning something else there, but in the private schools, they are getting something else. Then you come to the issue of free education. If we then say free education, we must say free education for who? Because we are saying everyone deserves to go to school and learn, whether you are black, white, Indian, all of us, we deserve that. But as long as we have not decolonized the educational systems, we are not going to be able to solve the problem.
I'm still not hearing from you as political parties suggestions on how this affects the various institutions of higher learning's models and their mandate. How are you going to capacitate them to be able to afford free textbooks, to be able to house these students? But I'll come to you, Mr. Mlosho, because you had your hand up and you wanted to respond to this issue.
Yes, in fact, what I was going to say is that, yes, there is free education, but that free education that is in existence is not free for all. Is free for others, and others are paying. So that is why there is a problem in the higher institutions, because, you know, as my brother has highlighted here, that, you know, some of NSFAS, they are paying, and others have not yet been paid by now. And, you know, people, you know, there is a mess up. In fact, we need a government that will make it clear that how are we going to implement this free education. By now, yes, there is free, but it's not implemented correctly.
So, Mr. Tsepiso, as a party that's governed, as you say, in KwaZulu-Natal, how would you do it? Especially given the fact that they say only 20% of enrolled students lived in residences due to a shortage of campus accommodation. That was in 2010. And basically the figures say a first-year student, they're expected obviously to transition into university. Only 5% make it into being housed at universities. How do you tackle that issue?
The IFP believes in free education from primary level up to a tertiary level. And the issue of registration fee at a university or tertiary level, the IFP says it must go because it prevents other learners to get access to education, which is being claimed now as free.
How will you carry the costs?
In terms of the cost, the country of South Africa has enough resources. If you listen to the Zondo Commission, where the resources of the country have been spent to people who are earning a salary, as of now, the state capture has costed 100 billion in this country, and that money can be prioritized to look at the student accommodation and afford all students all what is needed so that they can get a real free education. The main problem in South Africa is to single out corruption, because a lot of money is going through corruption. The IFP says if the IFP can take over, will establish special courts to deal with corruption, with all criminal cases against children and women, because the gender-based violence is a major issue in our country, as well as corruption.
So you're suggesting that all stolen monies will be then diverted back to education. And I must raise this issue. I am actually making note of who raises their hand first, and I'm actually taking it according to that. You'll notice that I'm being fair with that, so I'd like to please keep it in that order, the order in which you raise your hand. So I'm going to come to you, Mr. Khoza, and then I'll come to you, Dr. Dubois.
Thank you very much, Tsepiso. I just want to dispel this myth once and for all that there's free education in South Africa. There's none. There's no free education in this country. I want these two gentlemen who are telling me there's free education here to tell me where, which institution. Because this ANC here will tell us there's free education. There's no free education. When children returned to tertiary institutions this year, they were met with bills that they had to pay. They had to pay a registration fee. What is free? EFF says there must be free, decolonized, quality education from ECD up to the first degree. The question that says, where is the money going to come from? It's very simple. Or how are you going to fund it? And they would argue and say, why would you say free education for the rich and for the poor? It's very simple. Open the universities, free education for all. How are you going to get the rich to to pay. You will make sure that the rich are taxed more so that you can be able to subsidize the poor. Open the gates of free education. Why do we suffer? There's no accommodation. It's because all the institutions are in one place. If the EFF government would ensure that in each and every region or district there's an institution of higher learning. Let me make an example. Why should children travel all the way from Umhlabuya Lingana? There's no institution of higher learning in Umkhanyakude or Sisonke for that matter. It was a design of
So would you
apartheid.
standardize the curriculum? Would you standardize the quality of education at every single one of these institutions?
All these institutions, one curriculum, standardized, and make sure that we put an emphasis on indigenous knowledge and sciences.
Dr. Dubois?
A tertiary education is not an unqualified right. I think the platitudes that are spread around here that everyone is entitled to a free education, it's simply not possible. The country cannot afford that. The universities don't have the capacity even to house and teach all those people. So it's unfortunate that the previous state president came up with this theory that everyone can go to university. It simply is not practical. And that is what is fueling the frustration out there of youngsters who are seeking that type of education. But on that point, we need to consider all the people that were born since 1994. Why are they discriminated against they had nothing to do with the faults that preceded them, and yet they are discriminated against on the basis of skin color. That's why we say that if you had merit, you wouldn't have any of that nonsense.
I'm astounded that the political parties sitting with you are merely shaking their heads. They all have an opportunity to answer you, but I'm going to go to the Democratic Alliance for your response because your hand was up first, and I'll end with you, Mr. Kaunda. And then Ms. Pandey will come to you as well.
Yeah, firstly, let me say we are facing inequality in our country. Now, I have a problem when from Plus says we shouldn't really give people education. There is no way we can deal with inequality in our country if we don't give our people education and quality education. Now, the question of where the money comes from, you have to cut corruption in our country. We've seen on the Zondo Commission how much money has been stolen by the ANC government. As we speak today, those members of parliament are returning, and those cabinet ministers are returning, despite the fact that they've stolen money from South Africans. If we can stop funding SOEs, because the question is how much we're spending on SOEs. Now, if we can take that money and take SOEs, privatize, make sure you've got independent power grid on ESCOM, let ESCOM to separate twice, have someone doing the grid, have someone distribution, then you're able to save money. We are spending a lot of money rescuing failing state institutions.
I need to give Mr. Kaunda and end with Ms. Pandey before we go to our commercial break. Mr. Kaunda?
Thank you very much. The first acknowledgement that you want to make is that government resources can't be adequate. There are limited resources in government. Yes, there are strides that have been put to ensure that we become more responsive to all students, but the reality is we'll be phasing in all the interventions to make sure that at the end of the day, those students have access to quality education. And we must also indicate the recent announcement by the Minister of Higher Education on the payment of debts for all those students who are owing. So those are the kind of interventions
Ms. Pandey,
that we are making.
let me get you to make your comment as quickly as you can. I apologize, but I am under pressure for a commercial break. You can go ahead.
That's fine. Firstly, I just want to correct my brother Kaunda to say to him, please do not go around bluffing South Africa that the ANC is paying for education. It's coming off taxpayers' coffers. It's coming from all our pockets. When the populist statement of saying that education will become free was made by the president at that stage, he never thought of the actual groundwork that it would take to actually give our tertiary education or kids going to tertiary educations free education. They do not have the money. The money is not there. But how can we even go to our tertiary education when our secondary schools are in such a condition. I do not know where my other colleagues have been, but we've been to the rural areas and you have seen it. Our kids do not even have proper toilets still.
Jessica Pandey making a very important point there, and of course we'll continue with our discussion. A very interesting one, it's been. We'll then delve into the issue of land ownership. Who owns it, who's benefiting, and how should it be distributed? Let's take a quick break.
Finally, getting the click in Xhosa right. Mowing the lawn without mowing the cable. When your washing machine gives you all your socks back.
With so many good deals at the Tops at Spa Subfest, you'll find any reason to celebrate. Buy 2 6-packs of Hansa Pilsner 330ml handies for only $109.99. Only at the Tops at Spa Subfest. Not for persons under the age of 18.
Welcome back. You're watching a live debate here from the SABC's Durban studios in KwaZulu-Natal, and we're asking the various political parties why KwaZulu-Natal is important to them and what are they proffering the electorate here. ACDP is represented by Mr. Eric Archbishop Mangele, ANC's Mr. Thomas Kaunda, ATM Mr. Mxolisi Phakathi, as well as COPE's Ms. Jessica Pandey, the DA by Mr. Zwagele Mwango, EFF Mr. Vusi Khoza, and Freedom Front Plus by Dr. Duncan Dubois, and IFP's Mr. Velenkosi Nihlabisa is here with us, the NFP's Mr. Vigizita Mlocha. So let's talk about the issue of land. Now, you will recall that there was controversy surrounding a recommendation by a high-level panel that the Ingonyama Trust Act was unconstitutional and should be repealed or amended. King Goodwill's Weditini and his backers were infuriated by this. The panel basically suggested that all land falling under the trust should be put under the administration of Rural Development and Reform Department. Now, I'd like to start this conversation with the IFP to find out their response to this, because I know they weighed in heavily on this matter and there was disagreement about some of the statement. Perhaps, Mr. Tsepiso, you could share your thoughts on this. Do you agree with the recommendation? And
no, as the IFP, we do not agree with the recommendation of the high-level panel. And I'm glad that even the ANC, which had initiated the high-level panel, they did not support the recommendation of the high-level panel. Because if you take the land and give it to a minister who changes after every 5 years, you are creating a problem. But if the land under Ingonyama Trust is entrusted under His Majesty the King, then you place that land under the statutory body that is there for quite a long time. The IFP, when it comes to land, generally the issue of land ownership, there is vast stretches of land which is under the control of the government as we speak. The IFP says, take that land and give it to the people. You don't need to compensate anyone because that land is under the government. But we know that some of those land has been taken by the leadership of the ruling party as we speak, and they don't talk about it. But we know there is land under the state. You don't need to compensate anyone. Give that land to the people.
So you disagree that there should be a debate around lease agreements, around rentals, which was obviously the reason why the matter was taken to court, questioning how you could have one entity or individual or kingship owning land which should ultimately belong to the people, suggesting that it is only that one person or entity that benefits.
The actual land of Ingonyama Trust belong to the ordinary people. I am from the rural area and I have the land where my house is built, where my cattle are grazing, where I plow and cultivate crop. That land belongs to me.
Okay.
I pay nothing for that land, so there is nothing. The land actually belongs to me. And I think Ingonyama Trust made a good thing for the people of KwaZulu-Natal, unlike the whole of South Africa, because it managed to save the little pieces which the African people own as we speak
Okay,
today.
let's hear from Mr. Mngangwa. What do you think? And I'll come back to Mr. Kaunda, and then we'll come to you, Mr. Khoza, and then we'll go to ACDP. Yes.
I think firstly, one must say, we can't agree with the notion that seek to take land away from the people to the state. We know very well how corrupt is our government. Maybe unless if you have a DA government, but even then, we don't believe government should be a custodian of the land as proposed by EFF and the ANC, because they want to steal land from the people. But the issue here is, as Babu Hlabisa has said, I'm also from Wanongoma, in the rural area. We might have a land allocated to us as a family, but the truth of the matter is, I have no title deed. So meaning, without a title deed, I can never able to enrich myself and my
So
family
then
for
should
future.
it remain under the custodian of traditional leadership?
There's a discussion we must have with traditional leadership in terms of ensuring how do we amend the bill to allow that individuals are able to own the land.
Mr. Hlabisa
because
says that it's better off under the custodian of traditional leadership because everybody then benefits, and they were at least able to escape stealth by the former colonial governments or apartheid governments.
That's where we disagree. Currently, for example, as I said, I might have a land where I come from, Wanongoma, but I can't pass it to the next generation.
All right.
I can't even go to the bank and ask for a loan because I've got no title deed. That is why we're saying, let's give individuals title deed. Let's bring our people to dignity. Let's have our people, because poverty actually taken away dignity from our people. So up until we give our people title deeds for the land they use, that's the only way we can empower them.
What is your point of view? The IFP said you disagreed with the high-level panel. Obviously, there were reports that painted President Cyril Ramaphosa as being vulnerable to what was considered to be either threats of violence or intimidation. What is the official position?
Thank you very much for availing this opportunity to us, because, you know, people, they've been bringing a lot of perceptions about land, that the ANC aims to take 13%, which remains with the poor people of our country. And we wish to acknowledge the fact that the ANC does respect the institution of traditional leadership. But we also have a very clear conviction that our people should have access to land. So therefore, our communities should have security of tenure. Wherever they are located, whether the land is under Amakosi, that security of tenure
So then what does that mean in terms of the
guaranteed.
Ingonyama Land Trust?
That security of tenure should be secured for our people to have the right to say, here I am as this family, and that will unlock the potential of that family to ensure that if wants to remain to use that particular land for residential purposes, or if they are business proposals that that family
So
wants to make
what does
use
that
of
mean
that
in relation to the Ingonyama Trust Act and the land? Because we need to be clear about whether or not, as the IFP says, you are in agreement with them. Are you saying there's room for debate where they say there isn't?
We are saying as ANC, firstly, we have brought the issue of the land to Parliament, and the ANC has lobbied people to support its resolution from 2017 Nasrec conference, and the processes are unfolding as we have heard that the processes are really at a highest stage as we speak, in such a way that when we come to the next administration, where we'll be governing this country, we'll be taking the issue forward, but we'll continue and engage Amakosi on the position of government and the ANC.
Archbishop?
Yes. I want to say, we as ACDP, we understand that the issue of land is critical and is the issue of everyone. But firstly, we want this issue to be treated in a manner that no blood shall be shed.
Why would blood be shed? Because this is what I want to get clarity on.
Yes.
Was it mere innuendo, the threat of violence, or was there a serious threat of violence for questioning this matter, for raising the debate?
Yeah, I've heard that there is a misunderstanding between not only the parties, between people themselves. Others, they say they want to grab land from the whites. The whites on other side are defending themselves. That one alone may lead into a war. So as ACDP, we want to see things done correctly, peacefully.
All right, Mr.
Secondly,
okay, apologies.
I'm also living in the rural area. I 100% concur with the IFP. I'm 60 years now. I've been in that area. It has been not repossessed. One of the things which we say we are comfortable there is because we know if we can get a piece of land and give it to people, as parties have been indicating about the issue of banks, people are going to sell the land.
Is it fairly distributed, though? Is everybody benefiting? Because this is still
we are all benefiting, ask us. And again, people must learn to respect other people. Don't just sit in Johannesburg, then you think for us. Come to KwaZulu-Natal, speak to the king and Izinduna and the people there. We shall tell you what we want. And in the issue of Ingonyama Trust, we 100% support the Isilo Samabandla, that let him rule us and tell us what to do about land.
Even as the ACDP, so this is multi-party consensus.
Yes.
Okay, so this must be the first time the parties then agree on something as crucial as this. Mr. Khoza, does the EFF agree on this?
I'm appalled by the level of misunderstanding of Ingonyama Trust by all these parties here. Ingonyama Trust is state land. It is the land that was under the erstwhile KwaZulu government. When we were on the verge of elections in 1994, because the IFP was refusing to participate in the elections until the issue of land under KwaZulu government was clarified, a deal was struck with the ANC here to say, okay, let's take all that land, put it under the custodianship of the Ingonyama Trust. It is still state land. That's why the EFF, when we talk about expropriation of land, we don't even bother about that land. That's already state land. Ingonyama Trust is just an administrative
So is there a misconception about the ownership of pre-colonial land?
It's very simple. Pre-colonial land belongs to the indigenous African people. The people that came here on 3 ships, the dromedaries, the Reicher, and the Goedehoop, there was no land on those 3 ships. These ones here. So they came and there was no land.
You're referring to
and
whom?
his ancestors. In other words, the white settlers. There was no land on that ship. When they came here, that's when the first corruption started. They came, they landed here, then they started stealing slowly. They stole the cattle, they stole everything. That's when corruption started. It started with colonialism when they started stealing the land. Then it was apartheid. Apartheid made it legal through laws. They continued to steal the land. Up until now, you have the ANC now.
Okay, I'm going to go to the Freedom Front Plus, not because you said this one here, but he was next. But just to get clarification on this, your final word is that land from the Ingonyama Trust belongs to all South Africans and not the people under the monarchy of King Goodwill Zwelithini.
It's already state land.
Okay. State land. All right, so let's hear from you, Dr. Dubois.
Yes, the Freedom Front supports land reform, but based on Section 25, which means expropriation with compensation. As far as the Ingonyama Trust is concerned, yes, I understand there are legal and political questions around it. However, we see it as a precedent in that a community is being granted its right to that land, to access, and in that the Freedom Front believes in community councils where minorities can have their culture and land and language and heritage addressed. It's an important precedent. I am, of course, amused by the quaint historical theories that my colleague, Mr. Khoza, brings up. I should remind him that even though Jan van Riebeeck did come here in 1652, the penetration of what were ethnically termed Bantu peoples was only as far south as what is Plettenberg Bay. So in fact, that whole Western Cape, if you want to argue who owns it, actually belongs to the San and the Khoi people rather than anyone else. But to conclude, white and black both arrived in southern Africa through invasion and conquest.
In tandem.
No, not in tandem, over many centuries, but by the same methods, invasion and conquest. The original inhabitants were the Khoi and the Sand people.
Okay, Mr. Mlocho, because I'm going to come to the rest of you because, as I said, I am giving preference to whomever raised their hand first. So, Mr. Mlocho, I'll come to you, and then I'll come to you, Mr. Pagati, and then Ms. Pandey, and we'll come back to you, Mr. Tsepiso. Yes. Mr. Mlocho?
Thank you. In terms of this land issue, the NFP is clear. I'm over 50 years now, coming from a Mangwanene, Bergville. We are planting Daha there. We don't have a problem.
Are you
we
introducing
don't have a problem
the future
with that.
industry? Is the NFP telling...
You know, we are doing this for years. You know, before even this was permitted. You know, we are saying we are comfortable as NFP under Ingonyama Trust. We are comfortable on that. But what we want, let's not waste time. Let's take land from the whites. Now, not tomorrow, now.
In what way? In an ordinary constitutional manner, or...
You know what? You know, whites are living in Britain. They are owning land here. So, you know, there is a vast land here in KZN, and that is owned by people who are not residing even here. So, therefore, we are saying, let's take land now, and no compensation must be given to these people.
Dr. Dubois seems to be taking out a document. I don't know what it is, but we'll get the camera to zone in on it. But let me come to Mr. Pagati.
It is important that you note that the people of South Africa have been living with Amakosi without being disturbed. So what we are saying is ATM, the land under Ngonyama Trust is under the watch of the king. And the king have been living with these people without any problem. If you want a permission to occupy, you go to Ngonyama Trust and have permission to occupy that land. And you don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
Now, if you look at what they are talking about and say we must take land from the whites, I don't want us to use a race-based approach when it comes to this, because it's going to cause a fight. What we are saying is that everyone...
So how do you define restitution?
What I'm saying is that we are not going to find ourselves saying the land is with the whites, because there are people that are owning the land, and other people are not owning the land. There are Indians that are owning the land. There are black people that are owning the land. We are saying...
I am running out of time, and I'm going to ask you all to use your 1 minute in closing to respond, and also just respond to this question, whether or not you will entertain being in coalition with anybody at the end of the discussion. In terms of 8 May, come the elections, the results come out, and you have not won a district or the province, are you willing to get into a marriage? I'm going to start with Cope, and then I'm going to come back this way and end this way. So in your minute, your last response on some of the issues are whether or not are you willing to be kingmakers or going to coalitions?
Look, if we kingmakers, then we kingmakers, and South Africa will be saved. There will be a fresh start for South Africa. South Africa will unite, and we will go back to our constitution that was put into place by our forebearers. In terms of moving forward, in terms of coalitions, COPE is open-minded to parties who have like-minded...
Such as?
In terms of the issues of land,
name a party. You've got 8 others sitting here. Who are you willing to go into coalition with?
I'll go back to saying what I'm saying.
Okay,
Like-minded
so you're
parties.
undecided. Let's go to the
No, I'm
DA.
not undecided, my dear. I'm not undecided.
Okay, can you
I'm saying
tell us
like-minded parties.
Such as whom? You've thought about it. You've thought about it as COPE, so it's no mystery to you. Whom are your options?
Our options are possibly the smaller parties. I mustn't lie, because if you hear my brother from the ATM, you'll see that we're preaching the
Okay.
same language.
I just need a
But
clear
again, I
answer.
want to reiterate, we will only form coalitions that have the same vision as us to unify this country and bring back this country to its authentic state.
Ms. Pandey, thank you very much. I gave her more time because she was due to give her response to the other issues. To the rest of you, I'm going to ask you 30 seconds. No, Mr. Tsepiso, you spoke just as long as all the others. She had the least amount of time. 30 seconds for each of you, your final statements, and are you willing to go into a coalition? Let's start with the DA. What do you say, Mr. Ngao? 30 seconds. Counting now.
On the 8th of May, without the DA government, there will be no change in this country. Only DA must be in government. At the moment, we have to ensure that we create jobs, we fight corruption, we secure our borders, we deliver better service to our people. We're not at the moment thinking about coalition government because we're going to be in government on the 8th of May. South Africans are desperate. They need hope. They need change. They will be voting DA.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Khoza, your 30 seconds begins now.
In my 30 seconds, I want to address the issue of the Khoi and the Sans having arrived here. No, the Khois and the Sans are Africans, just like the so-called Bantus that he mentioned. So we are not settlers here. It's our land, or the Khois and the Sans and the so-called Bantus. He's the settler. That's one. Number two, EFF is not considering any coalition. We are going for a win. Come 8th of May, we are going to give our people land and jobs. We are promising land and jobs. We are not going into any coalition. We are going for a win.
All right, thank you very much. Dr. Dubois, your time starts now. 30 seconds.
The future of opposition politics is, I'm afraid, coalitions. And on the 8th of May, people must vote for the party of their choice and not start scheming about maneuvering parties into particular positions. The Freedom Front would be happy to be in a coalition with the IFP, the DA, COPE, ACDP, and the ATM party.
All right, let's move on now to Mr. Tsepiso. Your 30 seconds starts now.
The IFP is calling upon all people of KwaZulu-Natal to vote the IFP because the IFP has a track record. It can fix the problems that are being experienced in KwaZulu-Natal. But I wanted to make a correction on the issue of Ingonyama Trust. Ingonyama Trust land belongs to His Majesty the King as a custodian on behalf of the black people, not the state. You need to change the law if you want to bring it under the control of the state.
All right, thank you very much. And Mr. Mlotra, your 30 seconds begins now.
People of KwaZulu-Natal, vote NFP. You will get a change, you will get water, you will get roads, everything. So therefore, in terms of coalition, we cannot say it now because I've not mandated to say anything regarding that as a party.
All right, so thank you very much. Archbishop Mangele, your 30 seconds beginning now.
Yes, the people of KwaZulu-Natal, we don't need opposition parties now. We need godly government. Vote for ACDP for you to get to be free from corruption, free from killing other people, and also we can make a coalition with those people who are willing to work with us. But
your time is up. Thank you very much, Archbishop. Mr. Kaunda, 30 seconds
we as
now.
the ANC, we have worked a long journey with our people. They can attest to it that this province, the infrastructure has been observed that is being developed. We're building new schools, building new roads and bridges, as well as ensuring that our people, in terms of economic transformation, we're implementing clear programs to respond to those challenges, to put our people to the mainstream economy. And we are working with our people to ensure that the province becomes stable and we fight against corruption. People will vote for the ANC.
All right,
we are
thank
not
you very much,
intending to
Mr.
go
Kaunda.
to any
Your
college.
time is up. And finally, Mr. Phakathi from the ATM.
ATM, you vote ATM the people of KZN must vote ATM. ATM is the only hope for this province and the country at large, because ATM is going to bring peace and stability in the country, in the province. So we are not looking for any collusion party because we are a faith-based organization. We know.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you very much to all of my panelists here today. ACDP, Mr. Eric Mangele, Archbishop, ANC, Mr. Thomas Kaunda, ATM's Mr. Mxolisi Phakathi, COPE's Ms. Jessica Pandey, DA's Mr. Zwagele Mngqongqo, and thank you very much to the EFF's Mr. Vusi Khoza, as well as the Freedom Front Blisters, Dr. Duncan Dubois, IFP's Mr. Veli Kosini, Hlabisa is with us, and NFP's Mr. Vigizi Tamlochwa. It's been an interesting conversation, and we do continue it here on SABC platforms. It's back to the Full View studio. Thanks to the team here in Durban as well. Stephen?
More residents are barricading the streets, preventing cars from moving. Even police are battling to try and make their way through. They're saying basically that they're sick and tired with the city of Joburg.
Our police, they are roaming around with the vans here in Alexandra, taking bribes to these Somalian shops.
People, they're not working here. Firms are churching now.
Us as journalists have been on the firing line, who have been asked by the residents not to shoot them when they